So this is it. Welcome back after 15 long days. Tonight in our show Inspirations and Essence of Life, we have two close friends from two different regions of the globe, bringing Rev Dr. Franklin Ishida from the United States and Rev Dr. Chandran Paul Martin from India. Let's welcome them tonight. It's an exciting moment because after 3 entire years, we can meet and greet each other at Kathmandu. Let's hear more from them.
So I'm Franklin Ishida. I am the Director for Asia and the Pacific for the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, which is based out of Chicago in Illinois, United States.
So coming from India, I'm Chandran Paul Martin, serving as the Regional Representative for South Asia for development, disaster response, and partner relationships.
Chandran, you said your parents moved from Tamil Nadu to Bangalore and Franklin's parents moved from Japan to Switzerland and United States. So I think it will be quite interesting to know about your childhood.
Thank you. Yes, that identity is always important. I was born in Bangalore. So I grew up in Bangalore. It was very good. I always remember my childhood, my school, my friends, my small house where 5 of us grew up. And nowadays I wonder if my children, my grandchildren will be able to live the life without fans, without television, without computers, without mobile. We lived in another era. I'm glad I lived in that.
I was born in Japan. My father is Japanese. My mother was a missionary from the United States. And so I spent my initial months, so to say, in Japan. But when I was 9 months old, my father went to the United States to study. So we moved to the US, and I don't remember much of that, but we moved to the US for a little while. We moved back to Japan. And there I spent up through my kindergarten years in Japan, in Tokyo. Then we moved to Switzerland and spent 4.5 years in Switzerland. So again, some of my early childhood, some of my sustaining years as a child were in Switzerland and speaking French in schools and everything. And then we moved to the US for another year for my father to finish up his graduate studies, and we moved back to Japan. So Japan was then up through the end of high school, secondary school was in Japan. After that, my parents moved back to Switzerland. I went to university in the United States, went to graduate school in the UK, moved back to Switzerland where my parents were living and worked there for a few years before moving back to the United States.
Childhood develops perspectives. I truly agree on that. People defines COVID adversities wrapped painfully. Keeping all those pains and tragedies beside, what were the lessons COVID-19 taught you individually?
For the first time we experienced what separation means. In the same town, 8 minutes away from my house, we couldn't go to my children's house. So it taught me many lessons. So like what Martin Luther, the reformer, said, going through the pandemic, living through the pandemic, is not only about yourself, but it was your love to your neighbor. That was a key message for me. Because after that, I tested positive through an incident. And then I isolated. And isolation within the house, just me and my wife. Knocking, putting the food at my door, I opening the... It was so interesting. Many lessons. Lessons, what is exclusion? Because exclusion, the expression used was social distancing. In a country like in Nepal where caste is a big menace, is a big pandemic which still continues, casteism, exclusion. Here there was new words used. Social exclusion, social distancing, learning through that.
I was traveling in Myanmar at the time, actually, in a very remote part, and I had no communication. Maybe 2 hours a day I had some communication, but I was told to go home, return home. My boss ordered me home. I said, I can't get out. So the realization that what we take for granted, whether it's transportation or being in different places and doing things, suddenly when you're told you can't do that anymore, hit hard. So the past 2 years has been one of a lot of isolation, I would say. We shut down the offices, we all started working from home. We learned new things, a new normal, how to, work for our computers, which we always did, but work online with our colleagues or work online with our colleagues around the world. The word Zoom or video conferencing. Those are not the only platforms, but it certainly became part of our vocabulary and part of what we do every day almost. And as Chandran noticed, the way we dress, okay, we might wear a nice shirt on top, but underneath you have your pajamas on or something. You work differently when you're working from home. Children are learning from home, their parents are working from home. They're home all day. So it created a different dynamic for families too. And even then, the off times, what do you do? As a whole family, going out and playing in the yard or taking walks in the neighborhood. At least in our neighborhood, we can take walks. It's pretty safe and everything. So you see families walking around. You never see that before in today's United States. And then people greeting each other on the streets. Okay, we kind of stay a little further away from each other as we pass, but we'd greet each other, people we never met before, or friends we knew little about. We started engaging together. A very different community evolved from this.
Indeed, we're digging more into family and values tonight. There are two manuals ELCA has been supporting in Nepal through Sakriya Sath. Those manuals are Parenting a Journey of Love and My Life is Starting Now. Dedicated to parents and students, these manuals are a big hit in Nepal. Can you tell us more about them?
It was a very interesting project. How to take a written manual about family, about relationships, and then of course HIV being kind of the backdrop for all this and what we need to learn together as family, as community. It was a very intriguing thing to work with and to assist Sakriya Sath in the translation of the materials and the implementation of training. So it was a very unique project for the ELCA to be involved with. We're very pleased because what we thought was kind of a small thing, maybe, a one-time endeavor, even an experiment in some ways, turned into I don't want to say a massive project, by no means. It's still small, but it has a great impact as we see people learning in the context of family, of groups, of communities, what it means to be human beings in relationship with one another, whether that be in family or our communities, what it means to communicate with one another, something we don't do well in most parts of the world nowadays.
The first point of contact, the first connection, you going into the website, looking for this particular book and saying, you have produced this in another context, can we translate it? And then the way the whole thing unfolded, to the extent that we started believing again that a written material can transform people's lives when it is presented in their own language. Coming from India, speaking of faith, when Christianity was brought to us in our own language, the Tamil language, 300 plus years ago, it made the difference. And when these books were translated, I would even say adapted and edited, it made our project manual of expected outcomes. How does it impact another person's life? How did it transform another person's life? We saw it happen on our many visits. We came with you, visited institutions, communities where you brought these books. It was wonderful.
There was a father and his daughter sitting together, and they talked about how they are able to talk together so much more. Imagine a father and daughter talking. It never happens. in this culture, in the United States, in Europe, anywhere, to that level, the intimate kind of conversations that need to take place between two persons in a family, they learned how to talk, and they talked about that process. And it was amazing that the resources that you have produced, the workshops you have done, the gatherings you have brought together people with, is enabled people, families, communities to talk about these important things that make life real for us.
Now I divert this conversation back to your respective homes. You both are parents. Chandran is a grandparent too, right? So tell us tonight, what is parenting like in your part of the world?
I think we all come from cultures, whether it's Asia, Africa, Europe, or North America, where family has always been important. But the family has changed. And so how you are parents is changed as well. It's gone from, being a parent being involved in so much of your child's life to having different lives almost. School life, home life, work life, outside with friends' lives, with multiple lives. And how they weave together has been much more difficult because of different values even. The values at school, the values of family, if whatever that is sometimes, the values of the community and the whole country, the values of the community are sometimes clash even. And that's been the difficult part of how do you parent in this context. But I can speak to what I believe are so important. In the Christian context, they often talk about a family that prays together, stays together. Not always true. Yes, sharing the faith, sharing a common values together is important. But there's more than just that. How we see the world together. So in our family, we pray together. We go to church together. We share a common faith together. That's been important for us as family. But it's more than that. We share the importance of education. We share the importance of learning and also being inquisitive about life. So it's not my values I want to impose on my children, but have them explore for themselves different things about life. And then we can experience them together. And eating has always been important for any culture. At least one meal together was always important to share the day, share what our lives are about. So at least that's been my personal family's success, so to say. And even now, one of our children is married and others live in different places. Coming together when we can, and we eat together, we share stories, we just have fun together. We do have Zoom calls every 2 weeks though, because we're in different places, and that brings us together just to talk as well.
My own inspiration, my parents. My father, Deva Arul Martin, first double graduate in my society, in my church. My mother, who broke several taboos to become the first woman graduate in her own village. So education and love became the core. So for me, my parents gave me the first lessons in parenting. So they gave me everything. Education was key, faith was key, the same as Franklin's families. Spending time together, praying together. And now, I'll talk about my parenting with a joke. I was having beer with my son in Geneva. And then we were drinking, and then he asked me, Appa in Tamil is father. Appa, how did you tolerate me as a son? So I said, listen, go ask your grandfather how he tolerated me as a son. You will get the answer. You're the best son in the world. Love becomes the basic ingredient, faith and education. And you learn a lot through that process. My daughter Daphne, my mother Florence Shakuntala, my son Dayalan. Now, as a grandparent, from that I have to change gears because my grandsons, I call them buddies. Karthik, Raphael, and Zion. I've gone into learning. I'm learning new things from my buddies, particularly about IT. They teach me, Tata, you're boring. You don't know this. I said, teach me. They're teaching me new language. They want me to go back and read French. They're teaching me. It's amazing. Inspirations to me is also about learning in different phases. From being a grandparent to a son, a parent and a grandparent. Amazing journey of learning all the time. Of course, loving all the time.
You know, I think you illustrated the point there that I think it's always been the case that parents want their children to be better than them. And we do that in different ways. We want to teach them our values, our lives, and we want to bring them up, and we want them to succeed. I think in many cases, though, sometimes we impose on them certain things and want them to become better in that way. However, what is it about our children that we can allow them to explore for themselves and grow in that way? And yes, we learn from that. We then start growing ourselves as parents, as grandparents, but allowing our children to explore life, giving them that opportunity, even if it's vastly different from my worldview, it becomes a way to parent them so that they can become the best.
This question will be a bit of role play, as tonight we have two guests. One key message we would expect from Dr. Franklin addressing to Nepali parents and Chandran addressing Nepali students.
One key point I think for parents is trust your children. That's the word trust. But trust with hope, trust with excitement, trust with trepidity. You know, there's some caution there, but there are many unknowns. But trust your children because they will grow up to be the best. And we can love them for that. And if we love them for that, they'll love us back.
To the students, my own journey as a student still continues. I finished my PhD in my 50s. What I have learned in my own life, of course, as parents say, hard work, study for your exams. Beyond the school process, the education process, the learning you have, the passion for life. I would like to say, underline that. Your passion for life will not only determine your own future, but also open your worldview about society, about what you think should be the lives of others. Inclusion, justice, love for your neighbor, treating everybody as your... These values, they are not only imparted through institutionalized learning, but in ways of life. So to my students, I am still a student, I'm still learning. Also, don't forget your basic tenets of life, their passion for life.
Thank you very much, Franklin and Chandran, for being with us tonight.
The slogan for the ELCA is God's work, our hands. And I think we want to represent that, but we want to share that. God is at work around us. And it could be any God, not just a Christian God, but God is at work. But it's our hands that make God's work real. And together, we do that.
Just one message to all my colleagues. Wherever you are, whatever you do, you never fail to inspire me.
Whatever narratives we might have for life, inspirations shall navigate us to the right path. This was it for today. See you in the next episode. Till then, take care. Namaste.